All right, well, hey, thank you guys for coming to our meetup. This is our first AEM meetup for the Midwest Users Group that we're putting on. We wanted to kind of bring back in-person meetups. So if this was popular and you guys like it, then maybe we'll just come back and start doing more ones. But yeah, welcome. Thank you, everybody. I think everybody's gotten a chance to say hi and meet everybody right now. So I've got a couple slides to go through first. Oh, by the way, so I'm Tad Reeves. I'm from Arbery Digital. I've been an AEM architect for a while. My first touching of AEM was in 2010. So there's probably a couple of somebody's got to predate me here. Do you predate me? You don't?
I do not.
Oh, okay. All right, good. So I guess I'm elder statement right now. Do you predate me? No? Okay, good. All right, good. So I've been in the AEM world for a little bit, so here we go. We're gonna do this. So this is going to be done under the auspices of the Adobe user group. So as such, I've got a couple of housekeeping slides that I'm meant to do. So I'm going to do those right now. So first off, there are a couple other user group meetings. So there's AEM user groups that are in lots of different locales that are being fired up. Mostly so Adobe would like to have Adobe customers hosting these user groups. It's okay, we have them in every city. Right now there's a bunch of ones that just little collective areas. So if you know of somebody who could possibly run a user group, we're all ears. Just let me know and I'll just hook people up with people at Adobe. Nice thing about running user groups is that you end up also with all kinds of access to people at Adobe to be able to ask questions. So you never end up running into problems of not being able to talk to people. So there's user groups in end of June and another one in July, and there's another Midwest user group that's coming up in August, I believe, that RAF is putting on, and those are all online. So I don't know when our next in-person one is going to be. A bunch of you have already asked. I don't know, but I'd really like to do one because this is so much more fun than doing stuff online. Let's see. There's also a skill exchange that Adobe's putting on in August. And this is a whole online thing with multiple sessions, multiple tracks. They're doing AEM, Commerce, Marketo, a bunch of different stuff. So you can sign up there. And if you want to launch a user group, then you take a picture of those QR codes. Otherwise, I'm going to send these slides around. And also, you get a gift card as a thank you for sharing your experience here. So even if you think I did a terrible job, then you should absolutely still cash in on $25. Okay, good. House rules. So this is an Adobe event. This is not, even though a bunch of us are from consultancies and stuff like that, there's no self-promotion that we're meant to do as a part of this. So I'll try to leave that out of this. And then we're also not supposed to contact people outside of the user group without their consent. And then also, this meeting is being recorded. And so if you don't want to be recorded, then I think I'm supposed to tell you to get up and leave or something. So here we go. This is what we got. This is the URL for the Midwest chapter, which you guys have already seen. And here we go. All right, good. So what we're going to cover today is what are the offerings that Adobe has right now? Because we got 3 different CMSs that they offer. They don't just offer one thing, and confusingly, they're all called the same thing. So what are those platforms? What is good about them? What could be improved about them? And what kind of things should you be thinking about if you're put in a position to decide what you should do next? And because of the fact that you guys are all technical, I would really love you guys to just speak up if you got any, like if you have a personal anecdote or, oh, we already tried that and it was terrible, or Adobe said it was supposed to work and it didn't, or anything like that, just absolutely let me know, because this is a user group. This is not a summit presentation. So we're all users. So here we go. So I didn't know if I was going to have recruiters here to be able to tell them. So a little bit of history lesson here. You got AEM that started out as Day Communique, which it still was when I first started. And then morphed into Adobe CQ, Adobe WEM it was for like a month or something like that until it became AEM at 5.6. But it always was the same thing before. It was this author, publisher, dispatcher, and that was what AEM was. So you said, I migrated my site onto AEM, then it meant a thing. but it doesn't anymore because now there's 3 separate products that are under AEM as a brand name. So AEM is a brand name and not a product right now, which is confusing, but this is the state of the world that we live in right now. So I'm just going to go over these really quick. Some of this is going to be review, so if you want me to like move along and please don't talk so much, then just let me know. So AEM 6.5, which is also known as self-hosted AEM, this is the closest to the original AEM architecture. You've got your a bunch of different ways to deploy it. You can deploy it on your own infrastructure. You can deploy it at Adobe. They can host it for you. There's a couple different licensing models for that. It's super customizable, and it's been getting continuous service pack since it was released in 2019. We're at service pack 22 right now. Additionally, there is 6.5 LTS, which recently came out, and I heard a couple people wanted to talk about that a little bit. So there's been a lot of like, what is Adobe's future going to be with 6.5? There have been all kinds of people saying it's going to go away, people using it as a mechanism to get them to move to other things, other clouds and stuff like that, saying, oh, you know it's going to go away really soon, it's going to end of life. It is totally not going to end of life. And that was part of the reason why it's called this new version that they came out with. And if you crack it open and look under the hood, all the binaries and bundles and stuff are called 6.6. But it's not called 6.6. From marketing language, it's called 6.5 LTS for long-term support. The whole idea here is Adobe's trying to say, listen, there are some entrenched customers that really cannot move onto something else. We would love to have them on some of our clouds or something like that, but it just simply is not going to work because they're a U.S. government, or we've got things in China, or we've got whatever the requirement is. AEM, for all of its warts, is so customizable that it has so many of these. Like there's a bank that uses it exclusively as their massive call center CMS for their people internally as their intranet. You can't put that on edge delivery services. That would be impossible. So Adobe's in this for the long run. So 6.5 LTS has a couple of things that it can do. It's, for the most part, just 6.5. For the most part, it's feature identical to 6.5 22, 6.5 Service Pack 22. The big differences are JDK 11, which is what 6.5 runs on right now, is about to go away. So it's going to be end of life. So as soon as that goes away, then all the service packs that we're all relying on, all the security packs that we're all relying on, are going to go away too. So 6.5 LTS runs on JDK 17. They said, oh, it's going to be 17 forever. We're not going to confront making it work on 21. But then a week and a half ago, they said, okay, actually, it works on 21. So I had to change my slide. So now it works on 17 and 21. There's a couple of things that were deprecated, but most of us don't use them. Things like, what was it before AEM Communities, AEM Social. So social doesn't work anymore, but then again, nobody uses that anymore. But for the most part, the thing you need to know is that it's going to work forever, basically, until we all are in flying cars and things like that, right? We're still going to have 6.5 LTS for a while. So the only reason that you really have to move are going to be intrinsic qualities to the product itself, and not what is Adobe going to do to pull the rug out from under me, because they're not. They've got some customers that are simply they're going to be running this for a long time. Before I move on from this, does anybody have any questions about that, or things that they've heard, or rumors that they heard? Because I may know the answer.
The support is distributed. Usually Adobe has support mode lateral, right?
Yes.
They did not allow us to send the support contract.
Really?
They said we have to leave the area cloud. So on the day of renewal, the main master, they cut off saying, we no longer going to support it until unless they sign up for cloud. Then they can extend it for 3 months. If not, you don't have support.
We'll bleep this out of the video, but that sounds like a dirty sales trick. So I think so it's going to be supported from now until forever, and you can get support for this. So one thing I do know though is that so at Adobe Summit, this was supposed to be released at Adobe Summit. It wasn't released, but it did come out, and it was available and downloadable. It came out of beta status. So all of us that were beta testing it, we were all told it's GA. I think we were the only people that were told. So even anybody from Adobe sales, like I was talking to a lot of Adobe salespeople at Summit, and they're like, so what does it do? And I'm like, well, they didn't tell you yet. So a lot of Adobe sales simply weren't even briefed on the product. So because this is new, it's not the direction, it's not the primary focus of where Adobe sales is going. So that's the reason why. It still absolutely is a product, and it's still totally supportable. And if you talk to anybody who has been supporting it, they'll like, oh yeah, we'll absolutely sell you a support contract for this because it's going on forever. Licensing does get a little weird there, and that depends on who you talk. But I have another slide I'm going to talk about licensing, and I don't think I stepped across any lines in it. I don't. We'll see what I have to bleep out. So I hope we'll see. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I'd say one thing we're looking for advice on is, so we're hosted on-prem 6.5 service pack, 21 and 23.
Okay.
Trying to work with our partner team to invest in cloud, but at what point, do we have a decision point of just waiting to go to cloud versus going to LTS?
I think so.
So just looking more for like, how long do we have?
That's a super complicated.
Yeah.
That's super. Yeah, but let me. I'm gonna get like 4 slides down the deck, and then I'm gonna pick that exact question apart. Okay, good. So just to get all the other products out. So you got Cloud Service, which came out in 2020. Cloud Service is, as most of us know, it's essentially the same thing as 6.5, except for the parts that are different. So you've got things like author, publisher, dispatcher, which are all the same kind of a thing. You've got a bunch of other things that are, and how you customize it is also the same thing. However, it's got a bunch of things that are unique to it, like the inbuilt CDN is unique to it. The way it replicates is unique to it. The way that you ingest assets is unique to it. The way that it scales is totally unique. So there's a bunch of stuff that it does that is unique. But for the most part, if you are a Java developer and you know about how AEM is customized, all those skills and techniques translate to this, which is not the case for edge delivery. So the benefit is that edge delivery is simpler, but this is the same basic thing. You can only get it as a fully managed service. There's no such thing as a perpetual license. It's a subscription model only. So that's the only difference. People have been asking forever is there a way that I can get like a container, like can I get throw it on my own K8s cluster or something like that? And you can't. So there's too many things that it's tied into that are not just a cluster. Like for example, the author thing that backs the author, that's MongoDB Atlas. That's the MongoDB hosted MongoDB platform. You can't just go and stick that in a box and give that to somebody. See, I have a big diagram, and I could talk through this diagram, and if anybody wants me to talk through this diagram, I'll do it. I'll do it while doing a handstand. But whatever. I don't think I'm gonna do it right now. Okay, Edge Delivery Services. So the actual name, Edge Delivery Services, this is like the full name of the product when you buy it. It's Adobe Experience Manager Sites with Edge Delivery Services is what you're supposed to call it. It originally was called Helix, Project Helix, and then there was another Adobe product that was at the same time that was called Franklin. So they said, okay, well, let's just merge them and call them the same thing. And then Franklin was confusing, so they said, let's call it Edge Delivery. So it was GA'd as Edge Delivery Services. Internally in Adobe, the team is still the Helix team. And so if you ever say, I want to talk to the people who run the guts of this, you talk to the Helix team. So I still call it Helix. There's a lot of different ways of authoring things, but is everybody here familiar with Edge Delivery to an extent? Does anybody want a primer on Edge Delivery on what it means or what it does? Okay, cool. We can go there if you want to, but essentially, it's all document based. It's based around the concept of documents. However, there's a lot of different ways of getting data into it. You can author it with AEM using something called Project Crosswalk, which is now Universal Editor. You can author it on SharePoint. You can author it on Google Docs. You can author it on the new DA, which doesn't really have an official name, but it might next month. and or even Markdown. There's some Adobe sites that we're familiar with that are actually using Markdown as a mechanism for getting stuff in there. It is totally technically separate from AEM. Even though it's sold under the same umbrella, it's totally its own thing. It has nothing technically that is even similar to AEM. The stack, the things that you learn, the concepts you learn, the way that it's customized, everything is different. The plus is that it's a heck of a lot simpler and a lot faster to develop on. And we'll talk more about that. This is an example diagram of where edge delivery might fit into a modern architecture. So you can have, do I get a laser? Laser doesn't work here? Fine. Okay, so you can have, so this little box right there, this little pink box that my cursor doesn't show up on. Okay, fine. This little pink box is all that edge delivery is. This would be an example of where your documents are coming into edge delivery and getting published out. This would take care of, like, in the world of DA, which is my current favorite way to get stuff in edge delivery. You've got a lot of your page management, your author permissions, your metadata, all that kind of stuff is all being crunched there. But a lot of times you have other things that you might need. For example, one of the things that traditional AEM is super good at is taxonomy management. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but AEM is actually particularly good at managing taxonomy. And it turns out that running a site without managed taxonomy kind of sucks, especially if it's a really, really big site. So, or for example, the DAM in AEM there's no real replacement for the DAM besides another similarly gigantic product. So a lot of companies, if they're going with edge delivery services, they're still using some of these other Adobe products, which is one of the nice things about edge delivery being sold alongside of AEM as a cloud service, is because even if you were like, okay, I'm going to run everything on edge delivery, you get a full AEM cloud service implementation also that's basically sitting there for free. For free, you're paying a lot for it, but it's sitting there whether you want to use it or not. So if you want to use it for your taxonomy or use it for your assets or use it for servlets or whatever other funny things that you want to use it for, it's sitting there. The other nice thing is that if you look on the far side over there, you got that Adobe CDN that's there. This is a new product that they rolled out last year, which we're using on one of our customers. It's actually really nice. It's one of the nicer things that I've seen implemented recently. It's a really simple, configurable CDN that, like, I don't know, you guys are all familiar with, like, Akamai and how Akamai is usually implemented in an organization. It's like a lot of times you have an Akamai team that's totally separate from the marketing team because Akamai is running everything else besides not just your AEM, right? So a lot of times you don't have direct control over your Akamai and it's a real pain to configure. This puts your CDN configurations in the same hands as the people who are rolling out your pipelines. So you can do all, like, your different backends for different paths. And I have this one crusty old thing that's from 1993 that I still have to keep serving, and it's over here, and so you can just configure your CDN to go and point it at all. There are some other really neat stuff that I was hoping was going to be GA by the time this presentation hit, but it's not, and I'm not supposed to talk about it. But it's super cool, and I want to say it, and I'm not going to. But another configurable thing that allows this to cover more use cases in the whole directing traffic end of a CDN, which is really nice. Not just fronting it and taking load off of publishers and stuff, but actually being more of an application proxy, handling things like authentication and things like that. Okay. Yes, hit it.
So yeah, we're working on migrating to AEM as a cloud service. Obviously, we're trying to look at, do we have the same level of configurability as we do in Akamai? The fast thing, if we don't really want to pay for traffic remote.
Yes.
If we were anything specific we could think of that's like a major feature that you can't configure and that's been a headache?
Are you paying for WAF right now? Okay, so there is, Adobe's got a WAF product, and it definitely is not one-to-one with what Akamai can do. And I think that's where you got to look into individual features of what out of the WAF are you using. That's one area that I've seen is not totally feature to feature, toe to toe. But for the rest of it, I haven't really seen something that Akamai is doing. I mean, some people really leverage ESIs a lot, and but a lot of times if you're going to move to something like this, then sometimes you end up deep sixing a lot of those ESIs. So I don't know. So, but for the most part, WAF is one of the only things that I've seen that is not 100%. Cool. Any other questions before we go on?
And you kind of add a little bit of flavor to it. So like CPA configuration, right? So you just, kind of bundled in with the code base.
Right.
So that could be a really good thing. So basically, that becomes tightly coupled to your deployment. So if, let's say you have a 6.6 release, internal code name, but then you have 6.7, right? You want to make a CDN change. You kind of want to make sure that you want to maybe redeploy the 6.6 code with the 6.7. So you kind of want to think about it. It's kind of like a mono repo, if you will.
Yeah.
And mono pipe. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But if you make your textbook process work with the mono repo concept, I think that could be a really good thing. Usually you want to push out the CDN changes the same time you push out code changes. That's
right. And that, yes, exactly. And I think the nice thing about it too is that you can have so Akamai, you get like Akamai Stage with it, right? So with this one you do have an RDE dev stage prod CDN environment. So you can make CDN changes in development without affecting the rest of your pipeline, which is that part is also because I don't know. I've been on plenty of teams that are like terrified to make an Akamai change because of you could take down everything, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. The rule sets of on the optimized can be messy.
Yeah.
This one, to Cat's point, I very much into your pipeline. You test it with the code. And it can be nice, but you do need to adapt, right? So the CDN key needs to be folded into the release process, where sometimes they're historically not in the same release process as the AEM code.
Right.
And also just get a bigger focus on your CDN, right? Because often it can not be tuned as well if it's not part of your application.
I agree with that because I like on the Akamai thing being a different. I'm not just going to pick on Akamai because almost any CDN that covers more than just AEM, there's more trepidation on changing anything, and then so you just like why don't we do this in the CDN? Well, because I can't. If there's a whole change management process every time I touch that, so I don't want to touch it. Because I mean, like you take like financial services, that's one of those ones where it was like Akamai also handles the CEO's email. It also handles whether or not any of the ATMs work. It's like, yeah, you don't just go touch the configuration whenever you want to. So, I mean, this kind of thing, like to his point, like you can iterate on it some more. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about like what AEM Cloud Service, Edge Delivery, and 6.5 do well and what they're challenging at. And if you guys want to add stuff to this too, then I only have like 4 bullets apiece. So let's go through this a little bit. I mean, the thing is about AEM, and the reason why it's still around is that it's so flexible. Like, yeah, that's a curse also. Like some AEM deployments are like ridiculously complicated, way too complicated. But because of that, it can do like anything. Like like it could run a Tesla or something. I'm sure it could fly a car. It could probably do anything, which is blessing and a curse, like I said. Data residency is the other problem that like you got like cloud service and edge delivery both run into a problem like this. Like China is a big example. If you do any business in China, there is no such thing as edge delivery service in China. There's no such thing as cloud service in China. There's no deployments at all. So the closest you can get is either Hong Kong or Singapore or Tokyo, which is all outside the Great Firewall, and so your performance inside China sucks. So if you want to run AEM and you've got people inside China, you either have to do something crazy to get the data in there, which that's the topic of my Adapt To talk. So come to October, but or you have to deploy 6.5 into China. So that's another thing. Also, so one thing that is nice about 6.5 is that you can get so this depends on which salesperson you talk to. So there is such a thing as a perpetual license, and there is such a thing as a subscription type model, right? Where it's perpetual. The sales folks would prefer that you're recurring revenue, obviously. So they're not necessarily going to offer a perpetual license unless you have a specific use case for it. But there is such a thing as perpetual licenses, and a lot of like I'll bet you guys have a perpetual license. I'd be willing to bet. You probably do. So
we do.
You do. Awesome. Good. a lot of the older ones, that's how they were sold. Some of that license paper dates back to like 2007. Like a lot of times Adobe would just renew support, but the original license paper was on day systems AG paperwork. So, and those are still honored. So yeah. So some of those, the nice thing about that is that equipment's fully depreciated. You're basically just supporting it. So that can be a cost savings, as long as you have a good enough team. If you don't have a good enough team, then it's not a cost savings because AEM people are expensive. So drawbacks. You've got, development personnel, we're all expensive. So we all know that. We all know that we are some of the most expensive technologists in this field. And we're very difficult to get a hold of. And when we go away, then it really sucks. So, and companies know this. And so this is, if you're trying to onboard and trying to create a new AEM site, this is something that everybody knows, is that it's like, oh, they're like, oh yeah, I'll just hire some AEM developers. No, you won't. They're tough. So for the most part, a lot of times people like me and Jack and stuff end up, consulting, because that's the only way to get a hold of people. So, that makes it tough. The large footprint of minimum staff is a thing. So, I mean, I don't know how many people are on your team altogether.
A little hard to say, but
Like tech folk.
tech folk for AEM are spread across a couple of teams, but like hired AEM developers, very, very low, like less than 5.
Okay.
Everyone else is the top.
Okay.
Else, like
Yeah.
just front-end developers or other back-end developers who are like, you want to learn AEM? Like let's
Yeah.
train you up and get you in.
But that's hard too, because you're training somebody. You can't just say, Java, so you're in, right? Because that's like good. Congratulations, 20% of what you need to know.
We run multiple training, long-term trainings, just even try to get people through the weekend
Right.
project to just actually understand it, not just to walk through it and follow the instruction.
Right. That's a problem. The minimum footprint is a lot to run a site. And a lot of us who've been doing AEM for a while, you kind of feel like that's the only way that it could be done, but there are a lot of lighter weight things that are out there right now. And then you got edge delivery, which is super lighter weight. You've got, speed is a problem with AEM. AEM, we know it can take punishment. Like you can run a very high traffic site on it, and through good caching and stuff like that, you can make AEM perform, but it takes a lot of work to make it perform at a good level. Like it's not that it can't be done. Like you pointed out a good thing earlier. Like it can totally be done, right? Like it's not that a Lighthouse 100 AEM site is impossible. It totally is. But I mean, how many people do we all know who could reliably take an AEM site to Lighthouse 100? There's only So it's that part is hard. And it relies a lot on good caching. So it's not really possible to say, good, I'm gonna fire up 10 different data centers with my AEM gear. You're like, you don't have money for that. So
The licensing is going.
yeah, it would totally kill you. So you got that. If you want to experiment with edge delivery, that's the other problem with the way that they license this, is that your license doesn't include edge delivery, except for in some cases. Okay, good. The other problem is that the momentum isn't behind it. So, like I was saying earlier, that there's Adobe's going to keep supporting this for a long time, but this is not where all the main engineers are. Okay, cloud service. It's still accessible as regular AEM. Data residency is for the most part, handled. More on your terms, except for China. China's still not handled. But there's a lot of complicated scenarios that it couldn't handle when it was first released, but it now can. There's a lot of advanced networking stuff. There's VPN stuff. There's hardly any data residency type situations that you could make work with cloud service. Like I've seen thin server work on cloud service. So, yes, there we go. I'm gonna move on from this. there are a bunch of drawbacks and things to consider about cloud service. So one thing is about it is that it hasn't made your life any really less complicated. The only real thing made it less complicated is you don't have to design your own CI/CD pipeline. So it comes with the CI/CD pipelines. You already have the CI/CD is tough. DevOps guys are expensive. So designing that sucks. But so you don't have to do that. But for the most part, though, all the same complexities that you deal with on 6.5, you're going to be dealing with the cloud service engine. Migrating from 6.5 to cloud service is supposed to be really easy, and I've never seen it be easy. Has anybody done an easy one? I never did. So it should be easier than it is, but it takes a lot of work. So they were always supposed to be like a 90-day thing. I've never seen one like that. So that part's tough. You want it to be faster because it's auto scaling and all that kind of stuff. There's not really a speed advantage. And then also, so the other thing is about the way that it auto scales. There are problems with auto scaling also. So auto scaling is hard no matter how you look at it. It's just a hard problem in general. Auto scaling is hard, but there are limits to how much AEM will auto scale. So I've seen a lot of instances where you think it has infinite performance because it's the cloud, but it still will only scale up to a certain level, and you still have to monitor performance. So, in other words, don't fire your DevOps guy when you go to cloud service because you're still going to be tuning performance and trying to figure out why it's going down and all that kind of stuff, even on cloud service. And again, momentum's not totally behind this. They're still releasing new features. There's still new stuff coming out all the time. Every month there's something new about it. So there are people working on it, but that's not where the key momentum is. Okay, edge delivery. So there's a couple of advantages. So it's really fast. It's definitely fast. If you implement it right, and it's tough to implement it wrong, it's very, very fast. So if you use DA is the fastest CMS that I'm aware of. And by fast, it's like, so making, has anybody here actually done an edge delivery site, by the way? You got an edge delivery site? All right, good. You have, all right, good. Cool. So it's, by and large, I would say it's anywhere from 4 to 8 times faster developer hours wise. On like if you take feature for feature, I'm going to take this one site and I'm going to re-implement it on, I'm going to take this AEM site and I'm going to re-implement it on edge delivery. It's about at least a 4x labor savings. Now there's caveats. There's a lot of caveats, and it's not for everything. It's not for everything, but just on the things that I've observed on ones that I've done, they're like obviously if you've got a bunch of authentication and weird back-end stuff that you're handling, it's fine. You've got that's good. You're gonna have to handle that no matter what. But if you're just trying to sling web pages around, if you're just trying to you have display pages, product pages and stuff like that, it's very, very fast. And so the other nice thing about it is that the nice thing about the way that Adobe is licensing it is that you can, if you've got AEM Cloud Service, you can just start experimenting with it and deploy stuff to production. And that's the other nice thing about that managed CDN too, is you can just say, okay, this one path I want to edit in Edge Delivery. The rest of it's regular AEM. And you could just say this one path is Edge Delivery or this one site. So that part is also nice. Also, the way that Adobe is running their support experience for Edge Delivery is also really, really nice. So everybody here has probably got experience with daycare or regular Adobe support tickets. That leaves something to be desired. It's not particularly fast to get an answer. It's, if you've got a P1, then you can call somebody and you can get something fixed. But otherwise, it can be tough because AEM is a very tricky product to support. Like we all know our support guys, and they're just like they work themselves to the bone. It's a hard product to support. So it's nothing on Adobe. It's just a hard product to support. The support experience for Edge Delivery has been really nice. It's mostly Slack. They mostly do away with tickets. So so you get people and you just Slack them if you've got a question. It's really actually refreshing. So there is that. There are some drawbacks. So templating and component policy is intentionally not really much of a thing in edge delivery. So if you really are trying to lock things down and this author can only put this text in this field, it's not particularly great for that. Because one of its strengths in the way that it operates is you throw whatever you need into this document and publish it. So if you're really trying to say, I'm giving this one thing to a person and I want them to see the whole page and only edit this and only put these values in, it's not particularly great at that. So data validation is so-so right now. Like I said, taxonomy for the most part, you're not handling it in edge delivery. You're handling that in old school AEM for the most part, because AEM's still really good at that. If you've got stringent networking requirements, like if you're like for example, edge delivery is not FedRAMP right now. So if you're trying to do something federal, and you need like FedRAMP medium or something like this, then you're not going to do it on edge delivery. That is something they're actively solving, but it's not a thing right now. There's a lot of tools and techniques that are still early days. A lot of engineers don't know how to solve them when you just talk to your traditional support engineers. So a lot of times you end up having to have friends in high places to get appropriate answers to things. So if something is difficult, so a lot of it's still maturing. The plus is it's super easy to solve problems. The minus is a lot of them you're solving yourself. Yes, go ahead.
I'm kind of curious, you talked about the document-based authoring. Has anybody used Universal Editor? And I think mainly the concern for us, like from an implementation standpoint, pretty psyched about some of the use cases we could do, but from like author, content, and load, it may just come down to as simple as a decision as that, is like, you can't teach your OCMs.
Right.
But I don't know how authors felt.
Yours and very well spoken. Fuck, efficiency ranks up. It's features how far it's rather that file length suppose you're managing a couple to some files.
There are certain limitations. One of the things, like edge delivery drawbacks, for us traditional AEM people who've been in it a while, you have to basically throw away everything you've known about AEM and be like, okay, I need to learn this new edge delivery.
Yeah.
Because we went into it with this like, kind of component mindset. Like, I can have a banner component. I can put it in a carousel. It'll be cool, right? It's not cool. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But so there are some things, and Universal Editor, I think, like when you're an AEM developer, you're in AEM, you're using Universal Editor, you're mentally like, this is a good book.
Right.
Not a good book. Like,
right.
So I think some of the decoupling of that mindset, like in some of the challenges we've had early on in our edge delivery process, was because we were to Universal Editor. Because we were within AEM, we're like, it should work this way.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So, like, that's the one. From a developer standpoint, that's the one point. From an authoring standpoint, transition from AEM to Universal Editor wasn't really like they're like, highlight, click on it, rather than opening the dialogue and a bunch of hate on the right-hand side. Like that wasn't too useful.
Yeah.
There's adding to it. This custom Universal Editor is very interesting to me, at least.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 versions of Universal Editor as well. So it works with AEM sites.
Right.
It works with AEM content fragments, and it works with edge delivery. So like recently, Patty saw my blog on LinkedIn as well. There's actually 7 arguably AEM services out there, and 3 of them are Universal Editor. Yeah, so there's a lot. The time is limited, but somehow I'll come give a talk on Universal Editor.
Yeah.
Universal Editor itself is a puzzle on its own, and it can do a lot of things. And it's just kind of like what Matt is saying as well. One of the challenges that we're finding outside of who I work with, right? So I think we have invested a lot in core components that AEM as cloud service allows, right?
Right.
So one of the things that we diving into this is that we found that a lot of our internal investments before are completely not usable, right?
Right.
So if you build sites, right, with AEM's cloud service with core components, right, you will use a lot of pieces. Right? You can make everything, take the entire website out of pieces,
right.
Literally. But the same capability, right? So like Adobe has boilerplates for EDS, but one of the challenges or initial challenges we're finding is that the years Adobe's put into core components, right? Adobe has to have the opportunity to put into boilerplates.
Yes.
So the component was pulled out of the box from Adobe. Like the boilerplates is not as mature as core components yet. You will be, to your point. Adobe's putting a lot of momentum in EDS, but currently it's just not the same parity level baseline.
Well, and to that exact point, because I don't think anybody's taken that point up sufficiently with how inadequate the boilerplate is for edge delivery, because you remember the old what was it the old geometric site and stuff, right? It was a nonstop anti-patterns for what you're not supposed to do, shipping with the thing saying here's what you can do.
Right.
And then you wonder why so many AEM implementations went off the rails, because that was the sample site, right?
The core components were supposed to be good.
Yes, and it is actually pretty on the rails. So that's the problem with edge delivery is the boilerplate in a lot of cases doesn't give examples for things like, what if you want to nest a couple of things? How do I do a layout like that? If I've got a tab or I've got a table inside of a tab, what do I do? And stuff like that. Yeah.
They do have block implementation.
Right.
A separate repo for both traditional document-based and Proxmox.
Yeah.
It has many more blocks to deploy.
Yeah.
Even if you use boilerplate, you can go to that block repo and there's probably 20 or so blocks.
Yeah.
They're not as mature, like they don't do some of the nesting examples that
Yeah.
you talked about, but at least it gets you farther than the 6 down.
Yeah, agreed. But that's something that definitely could be improved. Like I could see like some more documentation around complex layouts, because that was where we, on our first edge delivery implementation, we're like, okay, how do we do this? This is a really wild layout that we did, obviously knowing old school AEM. How do I even do this? Because you're saying it's a terrible idea. Well, I get it. It was a terrible idea. But now what do I do? And so figuring that out, yeah.
I know you're not talking. And then you've got Commerce Drawbacks, which
Right.
follow a different paradigm
Right.
than all the blocks as well. So
That's true.
That's another layer that's within edge delivery that, like, those being developed off on the side.
It's true.
So how those...
They're totally different folks that are doing it too, yeah.
It's very much like what they did with the Commerce Integration Break.
Yeah.
That was the Sounder. The right thing.
Right.
Kind of doing the same thing with drop-ins.
Right.
But from a commerce perspective, if you were to buy Adobe Commerce today, right, you would use EDX.
Right.
Without question.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Right.
vertically is not what it needs to be.
Right.
So, like, they're almost serving two different purposes right now.
Right.
And, like, with this doc editor and would now be the new Adobe Commerce,
Yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic, and sometimes it's hard to find people who can freeze that gap, even internally
At Adobe, and this is something too that is one of the reasons to play with a lot of this stuff too, because you can end up with your own opinion, because like when you go to Adobe Summit, I never saw anything more of this than last year. Really, it's really the answers that you would get, like, what does Adobe say about this? It was a different answer no matter who you asked, because you have some people who are like really in the universal editor camp, and some people who are really like, I prefer that product had never been made camp, right? But then there's reasons that like when you really break it down, there are reasons for each, which is the nice thing about they kind of solved a little bit of that with the way that repos can now be like basically multi-homed. So you can say, I want this much of my stuff with my content being served from Universal Editor, and this much of it is going to be DA, as an example. So you don't need to choose ahead of time when you're still, like, for example, like if you're talking to your sales guy and say, what license do I buy? You're way beyond there. Like, good, I can solve it later. I can put it wherever I want, and it's not like a life-ending event that I chose this direction and I should have gone this way. So, all right. Oh, so the other bit of this is that licensing can be a challenge here, and this is one of these things that, as a technologist, I'm not supposed to talk about licensing, so I won't very much. But there's only consumption-based licensing, which can be a bit of a tough lift for some people coming from a persistent license world, where they used to paying this much for their Adobe license, and now they're paying basically per content request. So there's ways of recouping a lot of that cost with labor savings and CDN and a bunch of other stuff too, but that is a thing. Okay, so the which one question of like, which one should I go with? Again, for me, the answer is a lot of times, why not both? With cloud service encompassing the edge delivery license, you can do both at the same time. You can have some in one, some in the other. This doesn't translate into the 6.5 world, unfortunately. With one exception, is AEM Managed Services, which I don't know, is anybody here running on AMS right now? No? Okay, fine. All right, good. AEM Managed Services, which is Adobe's managed service offering. So they used to pay per instance, and now they pay based on SLA. But what they will allow you to do is they will write into the contract a certain amount of content requests and edge delivery too. So you could have 6.5 and edge delivery at the same time, if that was your destiny. Okay, so pricing models. So again, not allowed to talk about numbers, so I won't. So 6.5, so there's 2 different ways that it's licensed, 3 different ways that it's licensed. So you can either get a term-based license, you can get a server-based license that's perpetual, or you can do AEM Managed Services, which you're paying based on your SLA. With edge delivery and AEM Cloud Service, that is all. These used to even be 2 different SKUs. They're just one SKU now. It's just content requests. You estimate how many content requests you have, and they give you a quote. It doesn't matter how it's being served. It doesn't matter how you generated the content. That's just how it goes. All right, good. And then, all right, so here's kind of how I wanted to end. I wanted to actually just kind of do a little bit of like live architecture discussion, and just give some hypotheticals, and then let's just talk about if we were the architect in charge of one of these kind of situations, then what would we do, right? So let's just take this one, take the top one. You got a long-term 6.5 on-prem site, relatively steady traffic, like not super spiky, because super spiky that's its whole own thing. Like one of my first 6.5 implementations, or 5.5 was the Food Network, which the Food Network, every single Thanksgiving, the traffic would 30x during Thanksgiving when everybody in the United States simultaneously forgets how to make turkey. And then it would go back down. So that's a cloud type of thing. But let's say you get steady traffic. Let's say you've got AEM staff that are already trained. Okay? But you're ideally trying to leave hosting. You're ideally trying to leave the data center. You're not being kicked out, but your CTO is like, can we please not spend this money? So what should we do? Anybody got any ideas? Or what could be considered? What's your thought?
Maybe we migrate the cloud services, then Adobe would the infrastructure and the containers, and
right.
You would have your AEM staff, knows AEM really well.
Right.
So you were pointing earlier, very cool transition.
Right.
From on-prem to cloud services. It's all Java.
Right.
Because VMs versus containers, by the day, containers. I run my 6.5 on containers anyway, so.
Right.
Yeah, there's out of those for AEM's cloud service.
Good. I would vote that way too. I'd vote that way too. Yeah, especially if your CI/CD is already working. Like if you've got a build that's already working nicely, if you've been keeping up with service packs, it's like then your migration might be hard, but it's not going to be awful. I know a couple of them that are awful, but that wouldn't be so bad. All right, good, cool. All right, so but what about this? So what about you're on AEM Cloud Service right now? You're already migrated. You finally got there, but your performance is awful. There's actually one person that I invited to this who was running cloud service, and I was hoping that he was going to come because he was in that scenario, and I was hoping he was going to speak up because I'm like, I know his performance is terrible. They migrated everything to cloud service, and it's like, just like they have a blog, and their blog homepage is like, that was not a hypothetical. It was 7 seconds for their blog homepage.
And this
every time.
This is my 2 cents on this.
Yeah,
you
hit
guys
it.
are very different.
Yeah, hit it.
So like 2 years ago, last year actually, I did a cloud service project for a top 3, top 4 tech company, right?
Cool.
But not for the main.com, but for like an offshoot, like 20% of their revenue offshoot website.
Right.
And they have plenty of blogs. So this is where it's like, I think the same approach
Right.
with edge delivery, right? So there's this concept where edge delivery works fast because it's server-side generated content. It's not server-side renders.
Right.
It's SSG, not SSR.
Right.
So the more you take in the SSG concept, you can definitely make blogs. SSG it doesn't change that often.
Right.
So as long as you have intelligent caching rules, it works. Now, one of the benefits of AEM Start, this is where a little different. I'm an AEM
Yeah, it's okay.
fan.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Fastly does, even like Azure Front Door doesn't do, like CloudFront does kind of okay, is that they have the capability to do like a way to do caching that kind of caches way that the first request comes in is slow, but then every request is fast. But they usually express your cache. It does it in the background.
Right.
Like it actually doesn't quite match if you configure it correctly.
Right.
So that blog should never be slow. You can literally have a blog be cached by 1 minute, but because of the background refresh cache capability of AEM's cloud service integration with Fastly, the user interaction is less than 70 milliseconds every time because of the background fetch. Even though AEM might take 3 seconds to calculate everything you spend on the block page, but because of the Ascenian cache intelligence, which you configure that correctly, potentially, every single block page is 70 milliseconds back with the HTML if it's cached properly. So that's my 2 cents on block.
Which in this case, that might be a 1,000% valid thing to do with that one. Is just say you're already on there, just optimize your performance. Just like look at why your caching is so terrible.
Yeah. Right. We're optimizing.
Right.
Caching is tough. So
for
my client, what we did is, so they're adding on the caching a little bit, right? So there's the Fastly caching, right? And then there's the dispatcher caching, and then for Fastly with AEM, the cloud service, the Fastly cache actually listens to the dispatcher cache, And then dispatcher cache, there's 2 layers to it. You can either pass through using the AEM Java tier, or you set it directly in the dispatcher tier. So to me, there's like 3 layers of caching. Like caching is hard to me if you don't dive in. However, if you I'm a consultant, so I like spreadsheets. If you create a spreadsheet of each layer, if you're caching and exactly how you're caching each layer, and you test it and validate it, caching becomes easy if you put in the level of details that's needed. If that makes sense.
It does. But if you haven't gone there, if you haven't gone there, then you might just think that AEM is slow.
Yes.
Because the thing is, for slinging around pages, AEM is not that bad. Yeah. All right, good. Anybody else want to talk about this one?
I think it depends also the dynamic content that you're
Yes.
serving, right? Like you say a blog in Wage, that makes me think that you're probably doing queries or the things in the background.
Right.
Like, so understanding what dynamic content with the right view is.
That's right.
We've been promised that Adobe Elasticsearch will sometimes come content. I would love to see that because at least on the commerce side, with the microservices we cache in there that's there, it's so much faster than some other input. And so if we could get that on the content side, that would help things out.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. All right, cool. Good. All right, good. Lastly, all right, so somebody's coming from off AEM. So they have no AEM knowledge. So they would have to build whatever they're doing from scratch. But they're like, okay, good. We're settled that we want an Adobe branded product. Where do we go? So there's no AEM people, but I want a fast site. I want the tooling. I want to be in the Adobe world. I want to be able to go to Adobe Summit and say my stuff's on Adobe stuff. So
You're an expert. Yeah.
Okay. I mean that one's pretty much a no-brainer. Cool. All right, good. Well then, lots of it depends, and that's all I got. Thank you guys for coming.